Alright, you see me? Not really. Next thing we gotta do is we have to build the front suspension. Now, I was trying to figure out how wide to make the front. I just measured the rear. The rear turned out to be exactly 50 inches wide, which is almost perfect. Because that'll fit perfectly within the wheel wells of my truck, so this thing should fit pretty well on the bed of my truck, which should be awesome. Now, trying to figure out how wide to make the front. I originally thought, like, well, let's do the same. Let's do 50 inches wide. But it made it to where this tire would be right around there. And looking at that, it's like, I'm going to have to cut away a lot of the wheel well to allow for steering and suspension movements. So I made it to where it is now 54 inches wide, which is right around there somewhere. So that just makes it to where we're going to have a little bit more suspension travel. Going to make it to where it's further from the wheel well so we don't have to cut so much of it away. And it's going to make it's going to be a little bit wider in the front, but if anything, it's going to make it a little bit more stable at high speeds and just better, longer travel. So I don't think that's the end of the world. So now all we have to do is just measure how long the A-arm needs to be from the spindles to the center tubing right there. And then we just need to mock up and I'm going to make a jig on that metal table that I have to build the A-arms. Instead of trying to build them in place, let's just make a jig. Alright, so the heim joint's going to be roughly right here. So you just need to measure, which is roughly 19 and a half inches. Alright, so I'm trying to figure out where to mount this shock on these A-arms because that kind of determines how I build the A-arms. Now, these are the shocks we're going to be using for the front suspension of this thing. I bought these on Amazon. I forget exactly what I paid, but they're for a Raptor 660 or 700, so they have a decent amount of suspension travel as well as adjustable, rebound, and dampening. So originally, I was thinking of mounting them like down here, but that wouldn't really give us that much suspension travel. Then I'm using a ruler and measuring the distance of this, the distance of the travel, and figuring out how much travel we would have if we mounted it in certain places. So if we mounted it right here, we would have 10 inches of suspension travel, or if we mounted it here, it would have 11 inches of suspension travel. But I'm looking at this thing and it's like, man, this bump stop that's built in is kind of huge. And if we wanted to, I could always cut a little bit of this off to give us a little bit more upwards travel of the tires. So if I cut a third of this away, and if we mounted it right here, we could have a total of 12 inches of suspension travel, which I think is pretty good. So yeah, let's mount the shocks right here. Wow, that was a lot of material and to remove. Get that to fit. Sheesh. Yeah, maybe I should have chucked this in the lathe and bored it out before bending it. That would have been a lot easier than using this. not both. Alright, so this first A-arm is pretty much finished. Now, I'm mocking this up in the frame, I'm looking at it, and I'm really wondering, where in the world am I going to have room for my feet in there? Because where the shock is going, that's where I thought my feet were going, but I'm not really sure how that's going to work, so yeah, I may have to move stuff around a little bit. What I could always do is I could always move this mount a little bit further forward in the frame. I could move it up about 1.5 inches. So we may have to do that to make just a little bit more room for my feet. And then I'm also not really sure where the top A-arms are going, so yeah. So obviously I got to build the second one of the bottom A-arms, and I'm probably not going to bother filming it, so I'll probably just quickly build it and tack it in place. And then once both of these A-arms are done, then we can tack these in the frame and everything and mock it up and figure out if I do have enough room for my feet, or if we don't, we may have to move stuff around a little bit. So yeah, let me quickly build the second one. Boom! Both bottom A-arms are pretty much finished. Yeah, it's a lot easier building the second one because you're basically just copying the dimensions of the first one. Alright, so this is roughly where the shocks are going to go. So, yeah, I was kind of hoping that maybe my feet could go in between the shocks, something like that. I could, like I said, I could move the shocks an inch and a half more forward, but I'm not really sure how much that would help. I'm definitely not going to have room for pedals down there, I'll say that. Let me put the body on it and check it with that. Yeah, how in the world did I build the Grave Ninja to be so roomy in there when I have an engine in the front on that vehicle? I mean, it's not terrible, you know, if I'm spreading my legs a lot. I could see if I can mount the shocks more vertical and see if I can put my feet in between the shocks, but then it's like, where's the top A-arms going? Where's the steering column going? Yeah, this is gonna be kind of a challenge to fit everything in here. And like I said in the last video, if I do the idea of the differential with the differential steering, which I'm looking into it, it's going to be kind of a challenge, and I'm still looking at parts and still trying to figure out how to do that. But if I do that, the plan was to put 2 pedals for my feet, so therefore I can operate the brakes that way. My right foot operates the right tire, left foot operates left tire, and it's basically I have 2 pedals. I mean, that may work, just mounting the shocks a lot more vertical, and, you know, there's room in there for my feet. It's just, how am I doing the top A-arms? But yeah, that may work a lot better. Yeah, the original bearings on these weren't terrible, but the seals were definitely blown out, these brake discs were bent, and really badly worn down on the wear surface, so yeah. New bearings, new seals, and new brake discs on these, so these should be working a lot better. Alright, I'm slowly figuring this out. If I have tubing going from here and then bend it to connect to there, I could have it wide enough to where I could fit my feet in here. Is this enough room for my feet? I don't know. And then this is where I mount the top A-arm. Something like that. Let's go with that. Yeah, there's no way I can fit my feet in 8 inches of space. There's no way. So, I spent all day yesterday calculating the exact position that this piece of tubing needs to be at to have proper geometry with the suspension travel, and I tacked this in place, and then I'm looking at it this morning, and I'm realizing, like, I should have bent this down a little bit to have this go down to this corner instead of having it go to just the middle part of this tubing. But because there was 2 bends in this tubing, it was just a lot easier to bend them at 90 degrees from each other. So therefore this is level with this. But now I'm looking at it, it's like, it would have been a lot better to go down to the corner. Because we also have to have another piece of tubing going from here to here. And that would have kind of made a nice triangle. Yeah, part of me kind of wants to just move on because we still have the other side we got to do. Plus the top A-arms to build. The other part of me just wants to redo this. And I don't know, it shouldn't be that hard. The hardest part was figuring out the exact position that this needs to be and the exact height and everything. I don't know, it shouldn't be that hard to recalculate this and just figure out at what angle to bend this at. So part of me wants to redo it, the other part of me wants to just move on. I think I should redo it. Yeah, that looks better. Now we gotta do the other side. I am glad that I redid this tubing and had to go down to the corner. Not only does it look better, it just looks a little bit more professional. Now, I did want to finish the A-arms in this video, but I got really busy this week, and unfortunately I kind of ran out of time, so we're just going to have to finish it in next video of this project. Now, I do want to say something. Last video, I did say something about trying to replace the rear spool with a differential, so therefore we can have differential steering. Now, I have been looking into, you know, how to add a differential to a project like this, either converting a differential to chain drive, which that's not the issue. The issue is most differentials, most chain drive differentials, most of anything like that, from flange to flange, it's around 10 to 12 inches wide. Now, the spool that I made, because we kind of have a narrow wheelbase, because I'm trying to have as much suspension travel as possible, I made it 5 1/4 inches from flange to flange, and if we had anything wider than that, it would just heavily limit the amount of suspension travel we can have. So I'm not saying it's impossible to build a differential that'll work for this setup. I'm saying it's going to be a bit of a challenge. So yeah, not really sure how I'm going to do that yet, but I'm not going to give up, and I'm going to look into seeing if it is possible. So anyway, next video of this project, I will finish the top A-arms, get this front suspension finished. Then we can start adding the shocks in the front, the shocks in the rear. Unfortunately, we can't add the shocks in the rear yet until we build the differential and install it, because that determines exactly how much suspension travel we can have. And we have to do that first before we mount the shocks, so therefore we mount them in the proper spot. So anyway, guess that's it for this video. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video. Now, one thing that kind of sucks is I lost an entire day of work yesterday because I think I got carbon monoxide poisoning. The day before that, which is 2 days ago, I was like 35 degrees out, and I had this heater in here running for a couple hours, and gave me a little headache on that day, but it wasn't bad. And then I woke up and I had a blinding headache. I had cold sweats and throwing up. I was shaking, and so yeah, I think I got carbon monoxide poisoning from using that heater in here for hours and hours. So yeah. Shouldn't do that anymore. No more using that. Which kind of sucks because it's my only source of heat in here right now. And I've tried other stuff. I've tried the diesel heater, and it's just, that's even worse. I've tried these little propane burners, but they're just not, I should have put insulation in this shed years ago, and that would really change the kind of heater that I can use. Because this shed's not insulated. So the floor's not insulated, roof's not insulated, so all the heat just goes up and out. So I have to have a heater in here that produces a lot of BTUs to actually have it warm in here. But yeah, I don't think I should be running that thing anymore. I need to find a better heater that doesn't try to kill me.